Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have another excellent game to share with you from the Top Chess Engine Championship Season 28 Premier Division. A round 6 game played on August 5th. On the white end, Leela Chess Zero, rated 3692, playing against Ethereal, rated 3618. Okay, with this one, we have a Symmetrical English, and the start position for this game is right here. The first move of this game is by Leela, plays d4. The follow-up is d6. If black takes on d4, the way to recapture is with the pawn, playing with the duo and playing without fear of queen takes c4. This is considered a poisoned pawn. If queen takes c4, knight a3 is strong. Nice development with tempo. In general, the knight not so well positioned on the edge, but it does have a nice forward move in mind. After the queen reacts, knight b5 can be a move. There is this idea to maybe quickly converge on c7. The computer at this point is already running with an awkward move, queen a6. Queen a6 d5. If bishop takes, yet another developing move with tempo, threatening to win some material. And there's also this idea where after knight captures pawn, knight d4, unmasking the bishop. Not a good idea in this position to swipe c4, nor a few moves from now, where white has even more development. And I'll touch on one such case soon enough. So the response to d4, we just have d6, rook e1, knights connected, and from here we have a4. Now, if Leela plants a pawn on d5, there's this idea to play b5 and undermine this point, or at least try to. C takes b, there's knight takes d. Now, you could play in this way and support d5 with e4, but in a way, black has gained something structurally. There'll be the exchange of the knight pawn for the bishop pawn. Do know that b3 is not a good way to continue here, trying to hold on to c4. You're tactically vulnerable to knight takes d5 and bishop g7 issue on that diagonal. Anyhow, how Leela plays it, it's with a4, d5 is in mind, and there will not be the undermining b5 in response. Now, note the timing of a4. When exactly is it played? After the queen knight has made a commitment. It does not have a fast track into b4, the weakened b4 square, now that a4 is in there. All right, from here we have bishop g7. Let me revisit this idea to maybe swipe on c4. Not a good idea here either, with more development in. This rook operating on a half-open file. Knight a3, yet again, a strong continuation, and the knight is able to hop into b5 straight away, in this case, with the pawn there supporting the jump. So if the queen backs off, this is what the computer is looking forward to. Now, when I was testing out this variation for this video, I thought to myself, knight b5, can it just be kicked? White isn't in position to play rook c1 and then hop into c7. Well, hang on. a6, there's knight takes d6. Okay, that's a big problem. Anyhow, c4 remains a poison pawn. We have bishop g7, and now we see d5. Space invader pawn. Let's see how Leela works with this. Queen c7, e4, h3, knight c3. Where are the pawn breaks for black? b5, going to be tricky to get in. Possibly e6 to challenge this point. All right, let's see. e6 is tried. bishop f4, and now black goes with e5. We work with this locked center. Now, if black takes on d5, the top way to recapture is with the c pawn, take towards the center, play with a central majority. Now, it's looking at knight h5 in this position. The one move I had a look at, I was wondering about c4, this idea of knight c5. C4 straight away, e5 is already considered very strong. Anyhow, at the end of the day, we do not see the capture. A closed center is what we work with, and we are in for a lot of maneuvering. This is a 120 move game. Just yesterday, I covered a 20 mover, 120 mover, this one here. So how do we continue? Where will there be a pawn break for black? Can't get in b5. Too difficult. f5 is the most reasonable break to try and get in. Now, very instructive to see how Leela combats this idea. First of all, we have bishop c8. Nothing is happening on d5. It's rock solid. Bishop goes back home to one day, maybe support f5. Leela's plan, okay, let me put the king in the corner and the rook on g1. Okay, we're not quite sure what's happening just yet with this setup. Let's get a few more moves in here. Queen c2, bishop back home, watches over b5, follow up rook e1, queen c1, and g4. Let's pause for a moment. This setup, what's happening here? What can we note? There are no open files, not a single capture yet. It's going to stay that way for several more moves. Leela is positioning the rooks in a way to anticipate. Leela's anticipating potential pawn breaks. Knows, hey, you want to go with f5? Okay, my rooks are in a spot to now operate on two half-open files. Maybe I chop away twice on that square. Now, this bishop, also a very interesting piece in this game. For the moment, it is obstructed by 4 pawns. If these pawns stay here for the rest of the game, this bishop will never see a single square on black's side of the board. For now, this bishop is dormant, but not long off, it will turn into a star piece. All right, from here we have knight g8, bishop d3, combating an f5 break. Follow up is f6. Black supports g5 next, and this knight drifting into the weakened f4 square. Now, Leela anticipates this, underdevelops the knight, says, okay, if you're going for this idea, you're weakening f5, the knight is a blink away. That's how black continues. g5 it is in this position. Now, something I questioned, now that the knight has drifted away from c3, can black successfully get in a b5 break? So, with a little support, in other words, with bishop d7, b5 next, I believe with knight d1, Leela is saying, I'm okay allowing the b5 break. And I'm okay giving you just one open file on the queen side, and I'll be able to handle it. So to demonstrate, these are the moves the computer has its eye on, meeting b5 not with a capture in either direction, but rather b3. If you take on b5, this is where black has 1 and soon 2 files to operate on, maybe a little bit too much wiggle room for black to work with. One file, on the other hand, it's going to be easier to handle the black pieces infiltrating. So the response to b5, it wants to go with b3. Should there be a capture? I mean, these entry points are all covered. Maybe in some situations, the bishops will be stacked on the c file, and all of these squares are covered. Okay, just something to consider. B5 break can be allowed. Maybe it's okay to give black just that one open file. How it's played here, black does not shoot. For b5, after knight d1, we have g5, knight e3, knight h6, the knight dives in, knight f7, h4 break, h6, a5, and the follow-up is knight g6. Now, if black captures on a6, queen a1 is being called for, trying to recapture on that square. Another one is to hold up this knight post, this knight maneuver into f4, looking at h5 and only later trying to collect that pawn. All right, what's the story if black responds to a5 with b5? Here's how play would continue. There's this capture on b5 and then a6. And now what? What do you do with the rook? This bishop is now going to be a real pest. If you back off to b8 in this position, there's a7, rook a8, bishop takes b5, very active piece. And where do you go with the rook? This bishop is prepared to exchange itself off for one of the black pieces, the bad bishop. This bishop remains terrible. If bishop takes knight, this knight is not going to be able to get into g6. It's not a good line for black also. There is a b4 break to open up the position. Another path in this position right here, if a6 is met with rook b6, simple enough, there's bishop a5. So black is not in a position, in short, to respond to a5 with b5. We have knight g6, capture on b6, our first capture of the game, knight f4, and your first pop quiz of this game. What move would you play here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, where to go with the bishop? Instinctually, you may think back home so that it controls all the knight's forward moves. No, we have bishop c2. We'll see why this is a better square soon enough. Follow up queen b6, b3. This is one useful point, having the bishop on c2. That is a convenient defender, bishop here, convenient defender of white's base point. Follow up is a5, queen a1, and from here we have rook a7. I just want to back up for a moment here. If black goes with something else, so rather than a5, if black is taking this knight, how exactly to recapture? The best way to recapture, the better way to recapture would be with the e-pawn. So not towards the center in this case. You open up this square for the rook, the bishop, in some cases the knight. So after an exchange here, a maneuver into e4 is not long off. And there's also this point where after the knight is captured, what is black going to do in response to that? So for instance, let's say in this position, the queen falls back to defend this rook. After the capture on f4 in this position, if you take with the g-pawn, this is a break at some point. This is also a maneuver. And the other detail is that if you're capturing with the e-pawn, this is like an instant move. You pull this off in bullet chess, rook e6. Even if black has two minor pieces controlling that, you still go there. It's that strong of a post. Have a connected passer if ever captured. Bishop springs to life. My point is that if black is swiping the knight at this stage with the bishop, e takes is the correct way to recapture. In this game, we have a5, queen a1, a5 a target, defended, Bishop takes, knight follows, e takes bishop, h takes g, and black recaptures with the h pawn. An additional detail behind this queen a1 post, it was at one point generating a threat, ready to swipe that a pawn. Okay. Also on this main diagonal, black cannot open up the bishop's eyes here. Take on g5, that's mate. So h takes g it is. Another pop quiz, what is your move? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, a positional pawn sacrifice, e5. This is where we now start to see the light square bishop shine. An open diagonal is available. Follow up, see the capture on e5. These positional pawn sacrifices, by the way, are common when we are nearing a case of opposite color bishops. Who's going to have the more active bishop? It's going to be white in this game. At this point, after this pawn advance, now white is in a spot to recapture on f5. If this knight is captured, you're taking with the bishop. The light square bishop is going to be an animal. This bishop is going to remain ineffective. So black, in short, is now either going to have to work around a pesky knight on f5 or a light square bishop. Knight captures e5 it is. Queen b1. This knight is pinned, rook unprotected. King g8, king improvement. Rook is defended. Follow up, queen d1. And from here we have knight f7. Now, if knight takes g4, we would see rook captures rook. And then there is knight captures d6 with the fork. Bishop falls next. Passed pawn for white. You don't survive that. So the play here is with knight f7. Rook on an open file. Rook exchange. Bishop for knight exchange. And there we are. Black is up a pawn, right? But down a piece. Dead bishop on g7. The extra pawn black has is an f pawn. Can't move any of the kingside pawns. This isn't an extra pawn that shows up. An extra pawn that is felt for black. That is for sure. All right, from here, king f8. Let's see how Leela makes headway here. Whoa. We have checkmate nearby. The king is flying over here to the queen side now. Okay, we get the knight exchange. There we are. Opposite color bishop position. You've straightened out, Leela has straightened out the pawns, but they're under control. The extra pawn in this case, we could identify as the e pawn. It's going nowhere. You advance it, just be scooped up. The king, much more vulnerable. Where's the safe home for the king with all of these pawns so far advanced? There's no shelter, pawn-wise, for the black king. For white, there is. All right, check. Rook entering. Rook f7, king improvement. Look at how bottled up black is. The pieces around ranks 7 and 8. Back 2 ranks here for black. Leela in control. Swipes the g pawn. Now has a passer to work with. The king hiding on the queen side for now. We'll see how Leela interferes with that idea. Guards a base point for starters. And starts advancing the passed pawn. This king move, even with the queens on, things are cool. You want to insert a check? I'll throw a punch right back. You got nothing. The king can inch forward like this. All right, let's see what the try is. What's going to be the setup? Queen falling back. Queen d8. Bishop f5. Bishop e4. And after king f3, rook b7, another pop quiz for you. What move would you play here? Feel free to pause the video. All right, we have another positional pawn sacrifice. b4 opens up a4 for the queen regardless of how black recaptures. In the game, it's a takes b. If c takes b, still queen a4, two excellent jumps in mind. Also, if you take with the c pawn, yes, there's connected passers, but there's also this idea in some cases where c5 can be played. Maybe after a capture, there's d6, a second pass pawn to work with. This bishop remains a dead piece. This piece, a star piece in the position. All right, we see a takes b, queen a4, queen d8, and now rook h1. I've yet to comment on this. There is a significant difference between the rooks. Look at how shifty, look at how much more flexible white is with the rook. It's on the 7th rank on the king side, and in just two moves, rook h1, and next up a1, it's now very effective on the queen side. This rook not able to operate like that. In part because of this bishop, it does get in the way. The lateral movement there on the 7th rank, not that this would be a great square anyway. It's uncomfortable. The rook doesn't have as great a flexibility as the white rook. Another detail here after this rook h1 move, this pawn is poison. So in the game, it's king c7. If queen captures pawn, there is a check, another check, another check, and the minors, or excuse me, the majors are infiltrating. We already have a mate in one threat. Very difficult to handle this. Rook b6, queen c8 is mate. Also no fear of any perpetual checks. The queen also has a defensive role. Watch over queen h5 check. Anyhow, g5, not a good pawn to pick up here. We have king c7, rook a1, king b8, king stepping up to defend the pawn now. The checks again, nothing. You have a block. The king is cool here. All right, the b pawn rolls. This does distract the major pieces for a bit, and we'll soon work with a queen exchange. So a couple checks inserted. Black goes into a pin at this stage. If you move the king to c8, there's a check. Big problem there. King here, queen a6. Maybe into c6 is very strong. In this one, we have rook b6, rook a3, rook b3, check, bishop blocks, queen a6. We get a queen exchange. And after the recapture, not the immediate capture on b2. So it's these little details in this technical position that I like. We have in this game bishop e4. Not even giving black an opportunity to open up the bishop's eyes. Now it says you could play in this way. Go ahead and take on b2 and allow e4 and continue with rook to e2. Still winning. But how Leela plays it says, I don't want your bishop to even see a single square on my side of the board. Now, with this move, rook b6 is not going to work out for black. In the game, we have f3. If rook b6, you can exchange rooks. And this bishop is in a perfect spot to stop the promotion. And the king, now that it's on the b file, rather than the c file, is not going to be in a spot to box out the king. This king is going to get very active in this bishop-specific ending. King f5, e6, f7, and push your pawn away. Winning for white. All right. We don't see rook b6. It is f3. Leela just cleaning house here. Let's see the winning approach, cutting off any rook activity. There we go, collecting a pawn, and now getting to the 7th rank. Progress, slow, steady progress. The bishop's still terrible. Okay, no rook exchange. More active rook. Very clumsy rook, very clumsy bishop. 2 ranks black is operating on. Pass pawn rolls What an awesome piece this is, just gluing everything together. All right, got a check. And coming up here, another pop quiz for you right at this point. Well, before I get there, if this check is thrown and it goes nowhere, king steps over, targeting the bishop, you're ready to promote and say checkmate. All right, in this one, it's rook g2, pop quiz, final pop quiz of this game. What move do you think Leela played next? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, if there was unsportsmanlike conduct in chess, Leela would be getting flagged for this next move. And g8 equals knight. Totally unnecessary. Why not just go ahead and promote to queen? Rook takes queen. You land a skewer and win the rook up position. All right, who knows why this is played exactly. Maybe if you can, it's set up where if you could under promote to a knight and still be winning, go for that because you're going to get more attention. I don't know. Feel free to chime in on that one. It just ends up making this game a little bit longer. So let's see the conversion. Both sides have a passed pawn. Leela still up the piece, a knight in this case, back on the 7th rank. And we have rook g1 here. If this pawn is picked up, here's a way you could maybe see the game end with checkmate, a knight check, bishop inching in, bishop here, I guess. Maybe good as any. Check, discovered check. That's a cool mate. Anyhow, how it plays out in this one, we do not see the f-pawn picked up here. Rook g1 it is. And slow, steady progress. The white pieces finding excellent squares, coordinating with that invasive d5 pawn. Right around the corner now, I checkmate in 2. Bishop swiped. There we go. Second passer. Is this the reason why Leela wanted to promote to a knight? So that you can deliver a knight checkmate? That right there. Move 120. Anyhow, the under promotion silliness aside, I thought that this was a fantastic game. Multiple pawn sacrifices, positional pawn sacrifices in this opposite color bishop environment. Really nice play. Anyhow, your thoughts with this one. Feel free as usual to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.